Today I'm going to teach you how to start your podcast. First, I'm going to share with you some basics about the podcast and how you can set it up successfully. And then I will show you the practical side of it. So let's go. Let's start with some basic. Number one, I want you to make sure that you define your goals. Why do you want your podcast to exist? What do you want to achieve with your podcast? Is it to educate people? Is it to entertain? Or maybe you would like to build a community, or maybe you would like to promote your business. So all these different goals will have a different type of podcast. So it is very, very important to decide right from the beginning. The next step of your preparation of starting a podcast, I want you also to identify your niche. Here I will tell you one thing. I want you to make sure that the topic you will be covering, you're very passionate about and knowledgeable about. And then I want you to identify and put together who is your ideal listener. Can you identify the demographic information for them? What are their interests? Write it down. After you did that, the next step is to craft your brand. Now, what do I mean? It's not the brand. You can use the brand of your company, but some people who have not heard about your company will not know that your podcast is about, let's say, a pain you would like to help them solve. So create here a catchy name for your podcast. Also, under the brand step, I want you to design a catchy cover art. And I will show you this once I show you my podcast. Here, also, you have to write a compelling description or a hook. Here, it is kind of your elevator pitch. What is your podcast about? Now, after you go through this, we'll call it brainstorming and preparational step. Now, let's talk about some tech and logistic information. I'm sorry, I forgot that we have to talk about your format and schedule. So here, what I want you to decide is, how do you want to perform your podcast? Do you want to be solo? Solo is like you with your mic and start talking about a topic. Or would you like your podcast to be set up as an interview? Or maybe co-hosted. Like in my podcast, I was co-hosting with Michael Troyer. Recently, I just have myself and I have a motivational Monday morning motivation segment. Sometimes I do have interviews. Also, how long do you want your episode to be? 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. And this is again, we go back to, you have to identify and define what is your goal and who is your niche. Because if you know who is your listener, what your listeners are interested in, it will be very, very easy for you to identify how long the episodes, because some people love to listen to long podcasts. Maybe your listeners are one of them. So make sure that you go back and see every single step and download the checklist I will put in the description, and that will walk you through. And after that, how often do you want to post? Once a week? I know some podcasts, they're every single day. Sometimes it's once a month. Again, depends on the topic, depends on your listeners. But you have to identify this right from the beginning. Now let's go into the technical side. Microphone. What kind of mic do you need? Honestly, you need a good mic because a lot of people are listening, but you can find very inexpensive mics on Amazon, and I will link some of them in the description also. I'm using Blue Yeti. I know a friend of mine is using Rode, so it's they're very beginner friendly and just plug and play, so you don't have to get complicated. Now the challenge comes when you need to have interview settings and you will be interviewing a person. You need additional equipment. If you will be one in the same room, you will need another mic and a mixer. I will not cover this in this video. This video is just very basic video to get you started. We can have another video covering that particular portion. But if you would like to get around that, my advice is that you can set your interview and recording via Zoom. Because when you record your Zoom conversation, Zoom usually divides the audio portion and the video portion. So you can take the audio portion as from the interview, and you can upload that on editing software and you can do it that way. So this is kind of going around of buying a mixer. Again, you may be losing a little bit from the interaction with it will be more video interaction instead of personal interaction. However, at the very beginning level, my advice is to start step by step. Now, the next step is recording and editing software. These are two most popular ones. Audacity, that's what I use, and it is free. I'm going to link that in the description of this video. Or if you have a Mac computer, you can certainly utilize GarageBand. And there is other editing software, again, Premiere, Adobe, or Logic Pro. They're paid versions, so you can, if you're used to them, you can go ahead and use them. I'm using Audacity. From the tech perspective, it is very, very easy to use. Now, the next step is where do you hold all these episodes? So we call this one a hosting platforms. And one of the most popular hosting platforms, and I did not add here YouTube, but YouTube has now, they have a podcast. So my podcast is held on Buzzsprout. Spotify, or previously known as Anchor, has a free version, where Buzzsprout, you have a free version. However, the free version does not keep your episodes for more than, I believe, 90 days. Otherwise, their plans start at $12 a month for 4 hours a month recording, and it goes like $19 and goes up. I don't know the prices for Podbean, but you can go ahead and check that. Now, other portions is like creating intro and outro. What is intro and outro? Intro is where you have a little music, or you have some talking over music saying this is, now you're listening to, let's say, Small Business Survival Conversation podcast, and kind of giving the introduction of your podcast. And outro, when you're finished, that's kind of, again, maybe it's a music, maybe it's a wording at the end. In fact, I put together some kind of, if you decide to go with words, I put together some wording, and I will be showing you from when we go to the section of the practical section. So you don't have to worry about, I can show you a shortcut for that. Now, here is where your work starts. You already have a brand, you already have identify your niche, format, schedule, and you bought the microphone, you decided on recording software, hosting, intro, outro. Now is where you have to start planning your episodes. And the first one is record your pilot. So here is where you brainstorm topics. You can write engaging outlines and scripts and interview questions if you're thinking about setting it up as an interview, more of an interview podcast, and record your pilot. So here is like, where you kind of start and saying, this is my first episode and this is my format and things like that. So you can launch your pilot. And then the launching and promotion. Now here you have to make sure that you use social media. Maybe you have a trailer time. So what trailer is that once you record your podcast, you can take a snippets or just like few seconds of your podcast, and that you can use that as a advertisement. So people will hear snippets of your podcast and decided, do I like it or I don't like it? And of course, here also you have to make sure that you submit your podcast to different directories, let's say Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platforms. Now, just to give you again shortcut, like I promised you, you'll be an expert when we're done here. But I'm using Buzzsprout because Buzzsprout for free pushes to all possible platforms out there. So I just post one episode on Buzzsprout and it automatically pushes it to all the possible podcasts. And of course, you have to make sure that you decide on a launch day. You can even upload few episodes and you can schedule, let's say every Monday you can drop episode. If let's say it's like Monday morning motivation, I'm doing it every Monday. Or if it's every day, you can even record. You can do the recording one day and Sunday, and then you can start, and you can schedule to drop at a certain day and time. And of course, in order for you to grow and have following, you have to make sure that you promote each episode. You have to utilize social media posts, email marketing, if applicable, or relevant online communities if you want to make sure that people know about your podcast. People start following you. What is the topic? Different episodes, maybe you have different topics. What kind of conversations you have on your podcast. And of course, if you have a guest star, you can make sure that, you ask your guest star also to cross promote your podcast, which is great. And make sure that you engage with your listeners. Make sure that if anyone make a comment or question on social media, you want to encourage them to listen and interact. Or maybe you put together a Q&A on your podcast sometimes if you receive a lot of questions. And then the other most important part is once you start doing that, I want you to track and analyze. That's where for me was a key thing, because when we started, totally different name, totally even different cover art. We started and I start tracking and analyzing that no one was following up us because it was not Nobody will recognize what we do, what we talk about. And then I start switching, tweaking. I had a co-host. And, yes, we had a following, but it was not so great. But right now, I just finally found it. I finally found my magic touch, because every single Monday morning, I'll have a little story and I'll have some action steps I want small business owners to take. And it works. And the other thing is, which I have to ask you, if you want to start podcast, you have to be consistent, because consistency is the key. Do you know how many times I will listen to a podcast? I love that podcaster, and suddenly they will disappear from the air. They literally will disappear. And sometimes, we'll get busy and we don't listen to that podcast, but we go back and I'm like, okay, let me hear some more episodes, and they disappeared. But if you stay there and if you're consistent, I promise you that you will be more successful than any other episode that is not consistent. And here are some resources. I'm going to link them into the description of this video, so you can just click and get to them, and they will be able to help you with your checklist, which I'm going to share with you. And now let's go and let's get practical. I will show you how this looks like in the real world. So this is your practical side. Now I'm going to share with you my back end of my Buzzsprout. So as you can see, when you go through the checklist, you will see why do you define your goals. Here, this is a platform where you will be hosting your podcast. So it asks you for podcast title. Remember when we talk about brand, this is your brand. How do you want the name of your podcast to be? And then the podcast description. What exactly are you going to do? And then, format, I restarted with each Tuesday. I should probably change that, because right now it's every Monday. I don't think that a lot of listeners are checking, but sometimes if they're searching and they are not aware of your podcast yet, they may come up and look at the description. Then this is, again, part of your art. This is, we call it podcast cover art. You can select a file. So my advice is, if you can go to Canva and you can do that yourself, or if you're not very creative and if you would like a person to create it for you, you can go to Fiverr. I'm hoping that a lot of you are familiar. If not, I will have a different video how you can start with Fiverr. Here, this is a platform where you can hire freelancers to help you achieve some of your projects which you're not expert. And here you can say podcast art, cover art. And it will give you some options. And as you can see, for $25, you can ask someone to design for you your podcast cover art. And that's where it goes. And category. Remember when we talk about the niche, what kind of category you would like to cover. In my case, I'm putting entrepreneurship, again, language, time zone. So you have to make sure that you have to fill all this information. And then once you do that, now it's the time to record. Now you have two ways to record. You can record it directly on Audacity. So let me show you how easy it is to record and edit on Audacity. So once you download Audacity app, you open that app, and that's what you will see. This is your recording studio. If you would like to record, you just press the red button, which is the recording, and you start recording. And as you can see, it is recording right now, and we'll pretend that we are done. So stop the recording, and after that, you start listening to your recording, and we'll pretend again that you don't like portion of it. You just highlight the portion you don't like, right click, cut, and it is gone. As easy as that. Also, remember when I told you that I usually will put the intro and outro because we will pretend again that you already have your intro and outro already recorded. And in my case, what I do is I usually will import my intro first, and my intro, I import it, and it's right here because I zoomed it. So I'm going to zoom that in, and I will highlight my intro, right click, copy, and I just will put it right in front of my video and paste it. And that's it. Once I'm done, I will do the same for the outro, which I will paste on the back of my audio. And then I go to File, and I export my video, my audio. And then I usually export that on my computer, and I will put this test, and then it is exported on my computer. And then you can grab that and post on the hosting podcast platform you choose. So as easy as that. So after you're done recording and editing, then you come to your, again, Buzzsprout. I know that a lot of other platforms, they are pretty much similar to Buzzsprout, so that's why I'm showing you. You just kind of click on this and you upload the file. That is usually your audio file, and then once you upload, then you put the name of the episode. And what I was referring to, you just have to do this only one time. And let me show you here. Buzzsprout is pushing your episode to all these different platforms. So we're talking about Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Podcast Index, all different. I have not even heard of some of them, but you don't have to do anything else. So it is already out, and people will be able to access that. Now, once you start pushing some content out, make sure again to promote your podcast. Now, what I want you to do is, I want you to remember when we talk about analytics, it is very important to see, like, for example, which podcast was performing better, what topic people were interested. So you can go to the stats, and here it tells you, it's like a day, how many downloads you had a day or in the last 30 days, for example. And they're talking about unique. So if one person was listening several times to your podcast, they will not count. And if you like, they will try counting your new downloads, and it breaks it down. The best part is, like, it breaks it down by device. Now you know where exactly your podcast is listened to. Here, in my case, the top device they're listening is on Apple iPhone. And a lot of this even breaks it down. It's on Apple Podcast platform. So, and it tells you, is it a web browser, Overcast, or Spotify, like all different different platforms, different devices, different categories, mobile, computer, or unknown sometimes. And also it gives you location, all different, the last 5 episodes, the last 10 episodes, and it tells you where exactly they have been listening to. So it is pretty cool. And like I promised you, I'm going to help you with the intro script if you would like to use it, and outro script. If you don't want to do it, you can go ahead and ask Fiverr, someone expert intro and outro for podcast. And you'll be able to find a person to do that. So, and if you would like to if you want to come up with some ideas, you can go to ChatGPT and start brainstorming. So that's it. I want to hear from you into the comments. What is the name of your podcast? I really would like to see and hear some of your podcasts. Happy podcasting, but make sure that you are very, very consistent, because success doesn't happen overnight. Yeah, it seems like it happens overnight, but it's like by trial and error. Make sure that you go back and you check your analytics. Do you have traction? If you don't have traction, you have to change something. I changed 3 times my content. Until now, I start getting a lot of traction.